Delighted to say that sports broadcaster and commentator Ray Hudson joins us now, ex-Newcastle United player known as Rocky, and indeed, away the lads. Ray, we're going to be speaking all about Newcastle and that League Cup win, but first of all, thanks for joining us. How are you?
You're welcome. Wonderful here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the Venice of America, Ben. A beautiful, beautiful day. So life's good, yeah.
We'll get into your work and, of course, the commentary that you do, famous for so many beautiful, poetic turns of phrase. And I guess I have to put you on the spot, therefore, and as a professional commentator, say to you, put into words what it means for Newcastle to have won their first bit of major domestic silverware in 70 years.
It's dreamland. You know, the reality of it is, Ben, I equated it to what it must have been like at Woodstock. And glowing with that afterglow for so long after the event. And for those people that were lucky to have been there at Wembley, it must have been like being at Woodstock, you know, to be able to say I was there when that happened. And even though I was watching it from here in Fort Lauderdale, it elevated you to that point of absolute joy and wonderful accomplishment and achievement, and beating Liverpool, which I never thought we would do. Even it just amplified the whole experience. Astonishing and wonderful success.
Did you find yourself commentating on the TV?
No, screaming at the TV. My cat was like Zora. She was clawing at the window to get out when Dan Burn scored the goal. It's like literally it was manic, and I was going ballistic because that goal was so totally deserved, and you know you could sense it coming. But this was Liverpool, and this was Newcastle United. And we were playing so good, and then when Burnsy hit the exclamation point, hit the ignition button, it was like a V12 Ferrari taking off. It was staggeringly, beautifully magnificent.
It sort of says it all, doesn't it, in many ways? If you look at the two scorers, one, Dan Burn from Blyth, Newcastle through and through, and then two, Alexander Isak, the crown jewels, seemingly, of this new project under the PIF.
Yes. You know, and I'm so pleased for Isak because I actually identified him ahead of the Euros. That was basically his introduction to the world. But I'd seen him because I was calling the games here in the United States in La Liga. And I had seen Isak play, and the promise of magic was there. And he's obviously matured beyond that kid that he was then. And it was amazing. And I felt so good for him because it was as if, you know, I had seen what the promise, when they signed him, when Newcastle signed him, I honestly not sure how many people would have known Alexander Isak at that time. I really question, you know, the majority of the Geordies would have thought, oh yeah, maybe, yeah, I've heard of him, you know, one of those sorts of situations. But when he came, he's been starburst ever since. And of course, the Dan Burn story is one for the ages, and local lad done good and all of that. And to have been in his heart, in his soul, then every Geordie would have been. I know what it's like because I scored my first goal for Newcastle in the opening season against Derby County at St James's Park at the Leazes End, and I nearly jumped over the Leazes End when I scored for those black and white stripes, especially when you've grown up in that area. It was a privilege and an honour for me, and Dan said it exactly the same thing.
Yeah, Berners from Blyth, you were born in Hexham as well, so you're Geordie through and through. Yeah. Put into words what it means to be a Geordie and to have played for Newcastle United.
It is so special. It's like for every club, every local boy, whether Manchester or Barcelona or tune in. It doesn't matter if you're a local boy and you've grown up idolizing those colours and cheering for the team. To wear it, to take that progress up that, that steep ladder of achievement. You play one game for your club, one game, and you've been a success. I didn't play too many times for Newcastle because I had 4 coaches in 4 years. It was always like Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill every season. But when I did, I was well liked at Newcastle. The crowd really appreciated it. I was a touch player. I wasn't an industrious player, but it was skill. And to score my goal that day against Derby County was amazing. And there was a couple of others as well. But just to wear the shirt, to be at St. James's, where you had played in the park in Dunstan and heard the roar of the crowd from across the River Tyne in Newcastle when it was all open. There wasn't any roofs then. All of that comes back to you in a wonderful, pristine Rush. And that's what it was like. Incredible then.
So how'd you get the nickname Rocky?
Well, we had 3 players playing in the reserve team at the time, and the coach would be shouting, Ray, get back, Ray, do this. And the 3 of us would stop and turn and look around. So this day at half time, the guys, the coach said, we got to get this sorted out. Have you got a name, Ray? You got a nickname of anything? I says, no, and I didn't. I says, but my sister, whose picture you can see there right behind me, Pauline, the kids at her school used to call her Rocky because of Rock Hudson, the famous movie star at the time. So I says, my sister was called Rocky. He says, that's it. That'll do. You're Rocky. And it's stuck ever since.
Well, it's a fantastic nickname, that's for sure. And if you think back from the kind of 70s when you were playing all the way through until now, you mentioned Isak. We know the quality in this Newcastle squad, but of course it was there under Kevin Keegan and long before that as well. So who do you consider to be your Newcastle idols, or 1 or 2, in your opinion, of the club's best ever players?
Well, it goes back to my playing days when my idol was a player, Scottish international called Jimmy Smith, Jinky Jim. He was the king of the nutmegs. And he was a fabulous touch player, visionary touch player. The weight of his passes were measured down to the gram. And he had a wonderful guile and a languid style about him. Not the most industrious. The ball seemed to come to him. But he was my idol. And the first time when I got to Newcastle as an apprentice, when we were called apprentices back then, you had to polish the boots, clean the stands, and then you trained in the morning and afternoon. It was slave labor, is what it was. But I had to do Jinky Jim's boots, and it was such a pleasure. It was such a privilege to do Jimmy's boots and clean them. And there was 3 other players ahead, but Jinky's he was just a wonderful, wonderful player, similar to like a Juan Román Riquelme type of player, or a Sergio Busquets in a way. I called Busquets the art of slow, and that's what Jinky had in him. It was a crowd favorite. Everybody loved it when Jinky got the ball. One real quick thing, when Gordon Lee took over at Newcastle, the coach that went on to coach Everton, I was scrubbing the bath this day at St. James's Park, and the communal bath. And he says, what's your name? I says, Ray Hudson. He says, oh, Rocky, I've heard of you. He says, who's your favourite player? He says, oh, Jinky Smith. He says, how many goals does he score? I says, I don't know. He says, yeah, that's why he's not going to be a good player. I couldn't believe it, It was my idol just ripped down like that. But I never stopped loving Jimmy, and he's still alive to this day, and God bless him.
And if we sort of look again now at Newcastle United. What are they actually capable of? Is this first major piece of silverware in 70 years the start of, if you like, the PIF-led era of dominance? Are they going to qualify for the Champions League this season? Can they win the Champions League in the foreseeable future? And are Newcastle United in our lifetime going to win the Premier League?
Yeah, honestly, Ben, I can't imagine that dream coming true in my lifetime. I'm a 70-year-old now. I just turned 70 on Monday. It's a wonderful dream, but the achievement of that success it's such a steep ladder. There's no escalator to the stars. The process now is far different to when Liverpool were winning all of their Champions Leagues and the great Milans. We cannot even spend the money. We're the richest club in the world, and we cannot spend and I understand the rules, and it's working. It's good that, you know, new ownership, for how you think about PIF and the Saudi Arabian ownership. We've followed the rules. We've been adhering by all of that, but it limits us. So the shrewdness and the manipulation of the transfer market is a hell of a thing to lasso around. I'd love to see it, but I think if we get into the European Champions League next year, we could go onwards and upwards, but I think it's going to take an awful lot.
Just finally, coming back to yourself, I've had the privilege to listen to your fantastic and unique work for many years as being sports commentator, CBS and Champions League, and your turn of phrase is unparalleled. And I'm sure you could almost write a Ray Hudson dictionary where we define some of your turns of phrases live in commentary and then help the world understand exactly what you mean. But I just love the way you find a word in the moment. So my question to you is, did you always have this way of describing things, even when you were a player, before you were a commentator? And is it something that you determine live in the moment, or do you start thinking about how you're going to phrase something even before the game starts?
There's two people that I'll be forever indebted to. One is my father, who used to read me Charles Dickens books during the evenings. Not at length, but just a chapter or so, and that would be it. And his descriptives always stuck with me. And my English teacher, a wonderful teacher called Sally Herdman, when we went to our English classes, and she would read some of my essays out, and she says, "This is the essence of English language, children. Like Raymond does, he stretches the English language because he knows it won't break." And that is the beauty, the elasticity of English language, and how colorful the palette is. And, you know, I was listening to this along with me classmates, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. So I always had that joy of words and the joy of expression. And it came very natural to me, even though I was inwardly very shy. I was a shy kid growing up. The football pitch is where I was able to be more expressive. But yeah, what was the last part of the question, Ben?
Whether or not you sort of pre-plan or script them, or whether some of them just come to you right in that live moment.
Right. Well, as you can tell, my memory's going, so it would be hard to keep everything scripted down. But there are occasions where something will come back to you during the moment of the game, and it would be in something like you saw in a movie from last night, watching Star Wars, or in an event that had happened to you in the day-to-day operations. But certainly, there's moments that you'll think, I'll use that if the occasion determines, but it's not as easy as that. You have a split second to describe Messi. How do you do that? How do you describe, you know, candlelight? How do you count the bubbles in a glass of champagne? But we've got to do it on spot and do it justice. because these performing artists are so bloody wonderful, and the skill is so absolutely off the charts now, and has always been. And being calm and delivered, and without that flourishing color around certain words and descriptives, I don't know if it does those instances justice. You know, the one that I always remember was when Leo, I think it was against Sociedad. I'm not sure. It might have been, no, but Athletic Bilbao. And he had 4 players around him at the top of the box, and he disappeared through 4 of them, and then beat the goalkeeper from the edge of the 18 box with a shot, with a pass into the goal. And I said, he disperses his atoms on one side of this defender and collects them on the other. Now, where the hell that come from, I don't know. But you have to be ready and primed to amplify sometimes, to do instances of this. And Ben, I was so fortunate and privileged to get those players to describe, and you know, they were my muse, and it was as if it was so easy to do, but it was so difficult. It was a joy in my life, and it was a challenge in my life, because Cristiano Ronaldo was up against Messi. Pep Guardiola was up against Jose Mourinho, and the volatility and the beauty of these players on both these teams, and a multitude of others, gave me the platform to say, get up there on the spotlight, on the high wire, and do it, because you're not going to break the English language. Some people loved it, and I'm sure some people didn't like it, but that's okay.
I think everyone loved it. My favorite, Ray, was you commentating, I think it was back in 2012, racing against Barcelona, and Xavi, of all people, got subbed off, and you said the manager was braver than a matador in a pink tutu.
Yeah. In order to pull those off, they were again, where do you go with this? You know, we're in the entertainment game as well, Ben. Let's not forget, you know, the hyperbole, if you want to call it that, is okay. Call it what you like, but it's entertainment that people are tuning in for. They're not looking for a walk in the park. They're looking to be entertained. And I've been dead fortunate, Ben, that nobody's touched me. They've all known, well, you're gonna get that with Ray. That's the way he is. And never had one time people say you should do this, you should. I never went to broadcasting school. I still don't know what all the hell the bells and whistles are when we go in to do the games. I have to ask Chris Whitnam all the time, what's this one for? That's the blah, 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 blah. And so that part of it, it's all been supernatural. And thankfully, you know, in my life, there's been a lot of people. I've had a wonderful feedback, Ben, from a multitude of people, overwhelming as much as anything. It's shocking. You know, there was a fan club in Azerbaijan. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. They were from everywhere, India and Cambodia, and I'd get these mail. And it was like, how the hell are these people even hearing this? So it's a strange world. It's been a great ride, Ben. Great ride.
Well, top stuff, Ray. Keep up the amazing work that you do. You're brilliant. And I know everybody watching this will be absolutely fascinated by the insight you've given, and delighted for both you and Newcastle that you get to celebrate such a special moment in that League Cup victory. Follow Ray via his social media. You can hear him on the likes of CBS and Sirius as well. But for now, Ray, thanks for your time. And once again, enjoy those Newcastle celebrations.
Yeah, I'm still on cloud 9, Ben. I want to come off.